problem that you've ever come across in one little project. And without further ado, I'm going to let my counterpart, Phil, narrate you through the project here.
Hello, fellow members of the IRWA. My name is Philip Cole, and I work for Appraisal Group of the Northwest. Some of you may know my associate, Andrew Sorba, and for those of you who do, please don't hold it against me. Anyhow, I'm narrating this by candlelight, not because I want to, but because my power is out. So if something isn't clear, I can blame it on my working conditions. Today's presentation is about a project our firm worked on that, while small in dollar value and number of parcels affected, involved virtually every unique appraisal concept. Now, before we get too far into the presentation, I need to share with you that it was a very dangerous assignment that we were lucky to escape from with our lives. So remember that when you're filling out your ballots later. By the way, that is an actual dog I ran into on an inspection a while back. Not from this project, but while I was saying hi to this guy, his buddy jumped into my car, stole my lunch, and then peed on my car's tire. Anyhow, on with the presentation. Since the first step of the appraisal process is defining the problem, I figured that would be a good place to start with. On the north end of Whidbey Island is Altfield in Oak Harbor, and south in Coopville is the Naval Outlying Field, or NOLF. This airfield is used as a training location for the U.S. Navy's Growler airplanes. NOLF is used to allow Navy pilots to practice carrier landings in a safer, more controlled environment than out on the open ocean. In addition to this use, NOLF was used to train sailors on how to fight aviation fires. Aviation fires are more difficult to fight than structure fires because of the presence of flammable liquids. In order to fight these fires, firefighting foam, or AFFF, is used. Over the years, this AFFF, which was thought to be inert and innocuous, was getting into the groundwater. Per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, are a group of synthetic chemicals that are found in many domestic and industrial applications, Teflon being among the most well-known. In the 1960s, the U.S. Navy developed AFFF, or aqueous film-forming foam, which used a fluorinated surfactant to form a fast-spreading foam that creates and supports a water film over burning liquids such as jet fuel or oil. Such firefighting foams are now widely used to fight fires where liquid fuels may be burning, such as at vehicle crash sites and industrial accidents. Recent studies have shown that PFOA, a specific PFAS, is carcinogenic, hemotoxic, suppresses the immune system, and can cause thyroid dysfunction. Once PFAS contamination was found in the groundwater, the U.S. Navy started to provide deliveries of filtered water in 5-gallon jugs to people with affected water supplies. This was not a long-term solution, though. They looked into installing whole-house filters, but decided that the ongoing liability and cost associated with maintaining such systems were undesirable. So, the Navy instead opted to upgrade the municipal water system's filtration and pay to extend the municipal water supply to the affected properties. There were 2 neighborhoods that were part of this acquisition project, but we're going to focus on just one. Due to the ongoing process, I cannot be too specific. It is a cluster of about 17 parcels that are all accessed by a single-lane gravel road. This road is located on an easement along a portion of the affected parcels. Well, it was supposed to be on an easement, but we'll talk about that more later. All the parcels in this area received their water from private wells, but due to the underground topography, only some wells showed elevated levels of PFAS. The project would only be paying to hook up those property owners who were affected, but required an easement from everyone. As the project began, the engineering firm CH2M Jacobs found that the easement rights were inconsistent. They were able to find records for the road access across some parcels, but not others. In addition, there were inconsistent utility easements, ingress and egress agreements, and maintenance agreements. So the acquisition scope increased. Rather than just seeking a new utility easement, the project would seek to consolidate and
Andrew, I think you froze. Uh-oh. Andrew? Andrew, are you still there? All right, sorry guys, I think we lost Andrew for a minute here. Work on getting him back. All right, looks like we lost Andrew. He is on his way back in here. Apologize for the delay.
Yeah, those eyes of that little kid were kept getting bigger.
It's a great meme, though. That's a classic.
It is, isn't it? All right, well, we may need to move on to Common Street, and we can always circle back with Andrew at the end here. Without seeing Andrew. Hutch, Rich, are you still there?
Yeah, Hutch, I'm here. Ready
Hey,
to
Hutch.
rock when you are. Hey,
Yeah.
Jesse.
Appreciate you coming out and presenting to our group today. I think let's go ahead and get started since I think we lost Andrew. So you can take it away when you are ready.
Okay, let me just make sure I got my screen share. So I just do screen share on my side, right?
Yes, that should work.
Okay. Oh, Rich, what's going on here? Open system preferences. To do that.
Should be the green screen share button at the bottom of Zoom.
Yeah, oh, there you go.
Just had to unlock it.
Later.
Okay, we're gonna have to quit. We'll be right back.
We'll not be able to record the contents. I think that's okay. Do later. See if that works. All right. There we go. All right. There we go. How's that? You guys see the screen okay?
You got it.
We had a little little ditty there where they my computer told me that it doesn't want to share with Zoom, but here we go. I think we're rocking now. Let's go to that and play from start. Okay, everybody see that okay? Minimize.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, appreciate the time and yeah, for just having the opportunity. This has been quite a journey for us at the Alaskan Way Viaduct team. And I would just say, you know, from the outset, this is kind of one of those projects, you know, I remember some of our project team after one of our status meetings was done, and we kind of look at the ceiling and we're like, this is probably a once in a career thing that we're a part of here. It was such a long project. It was a project that went over the course of several years. And we just found out, I put this little thing on this slide here, which is kind of cool. I just recently, the Alaskan Way Viaduct was awarded the National APWA Project of the Year, which was pretty cool for obviously all of its technical design. I think it's one of the largest underground tunnels now in the world, which is pretty awesome. And just a kind of one of those, it's a privilege to be a part of type of project. So without further ado, I'm just gonna start off, I think, by, there we go. Oops, oh, it's a little bit of a delay here. There we go. Start off by just saying that, you know, none of us is as smart as all of us. I love that quote from Ken Blanchard. This was a project that was, it was a total team effort. And we have, obviously HDR played such a critical role in the, particularly in the temporary relocation aspect of the project. And I know Brad Thomas is on to greener pastures now, but I know Krista's still kicking it there at HDR and staying busy. And there were several others on HDR's team. So just want to give them a shout out, tell them, you know, thanks for your participation. McKee Appraisal did such a great job. This is one of the most complicated appraisal assignments that we've seen in, so far I've been in the industry for 20 years. They just did a great job of getting things done on time. And Ron Wright and Associates, for those of you who are in the downtown sector quite a bit, as we tend to find ourselves, he's a architect that helped us with mitigation planning. Enviro Issues, they did the communications. WASDOT HQ Real Estate was so key in delivering this. Lisa Shaw, Holly Rogie, who's gone on now to other pastors, Charlene Mullis, Matt Hewitt at the AG office, of course, WASDOT's AWV team, just in general. And of course, Dave Lehow, who's a legend in the industry, as we all know. And he just helped us to develop this incentive program that we've been really proud to call as something that we got to see in our career come to fruition. So with that, I'm going to click, here we go. The big picture. 84 parcels, 300 plus property rights. It's hard to like pay attention to the presentation with these pictures because they're so insane. I mean, you're watching like whatever it is, a 600,000 ton structure just being demolished like 6 feet in front of, you know, every major building in downtown Seattle that's along the waterfront. So it's just kind of a remarkable picture project with as far as being told in pictures. So you can see here in this picture real fast, that's kind of baseball netting that they put up there where you, and that was an effort to protect from flying concrete blocks, which sometimes they were not always successful in doing. We'll chat about that in a minute. And that was kind of their way of the construction team to try to protect the windows and the doors, etc. 300 plus property rights, obviously huge downtown corridor. This was a TCE project, you know, famous last words in right of way. Oh, it's just a TCE project. That's not a thing. This, it was 84 parcels and 84 TCEs. There were a couple of permanent easements, but this project that kept a team of 10 to 15 people busy for 3 or 4 years was just a TCE project, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Highly political, multiple stakeholders. We were dealing with multi-millionaires that owned all these big swaths of waterfront properties. And then we're also dealing with a ton of minority-owned businesses and people that had small businesses that were really dependent on the downtown corridor. So it's just such a neat variety of everybody. Very aggressive design build schedule that we'll talk about in a second. I kind of categorize this presentation as sort of 3 different problems. The first one I would say is appraisal problems. The second one was occupancy problems. And the third one is contractor problems. So from an appraisal standpoint, I know several of you on here that are appraisers can appreciate this. We had a very significant issue on this project. The issue was, and this is a great picture for it too, if you can see on the far right of this picture, there's obviously a building that's very close there. And if you can see that the windows, at least on the second and many times the third story, sometimes even the fourth story, had this concrete viaduct structure directly in front of their window. WASDOT Real Estate needed to, by just constrained by their own rules, to consider special benefits offsets in this program. Well, since it was a TCE project, what that essentially meant as we were developing the program was that, you know, there's TCEs for $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. And what we were recognizing is that some of these buildings were going to go up from $2 million per building to $4 million a building, from $4 million a building to $6 million a building. And it's because so many of these units are now going to have an unobstructed view of Puget Sound once that viaduct comes down. When we really began to dig into that, and we recognized that we had less than 9 months basically to acquire all these properties once appraisal is done, we were like, this is not a thing. That's not going to work. We can't make 74 $0 offers or 60 $0 offers. And this is what began a very, it was a pretty fast, I think it was 60 days from start to finish. I was talking with Todd Hudak, my partner on this. The development of Washington State's first incentive program, and this is just kind of one of many unique facets of this program. And essentially what we did is we took the value that they would have been paid had there not been this massive $1 million offset, and we gave them a percentage of that offer, depending on whether they settled within 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. And so in one case, it would be 100% of what they would have been paid. In other case, it'd been, I think, 60%, and then I think 40%. And so that at least allowed, and it's funny to be on the phone with a multimillionaire saying, Hutch, we need to settle this thing by February 2nd because I need to get my $1,200. Like, that's got to happen. So I would say that it was effective for probably about half of the property owners who were really trying to get that incentive. As small as it is, it's kind of a, it's one of those torture things, right? There's like money on the table. I can't miss it. And so it was cool to be able to see that that incentive program worked. Occupancy problems. When we first walked the project, we walked it with Seattle Department of Construction and Inspection, SDCI. And they said, look, you have an occupancy problem here. If you have 0 to 50 people or 50 to 100 and you block one of their access points by these fabulous, metal baseball nets here, you have to create an alternative access point. This involved sometimes using emergency exits where they formerly were not used at all. This sometimes involved blowing out a wall where we had to create some other way for people to get in and out. This is where we brought in Ron Wright, who is an architect that is just so gifted in the downtown area, knows so much knowledge about the ins and outs of these things. And so we had to do a mitigation plan for several of these properties. We started with about 15, and then we had about 11. So we had about 15% of the properties. We had to create a totally different way for them to get in and out of the property during construction. There was over 1,000 car displacements. So we're blocking garages. This was huge, where Krista and Brad and their team came in, where they were instrumental in creating what we were calling relocation mitigation agreements with agencies, or what, not with agencies, sorry, with property owners, where we would say, look, for, it would cost this much to do a valet service. If we pay you this, can you relocate these cars and all these different garages? It's a crazy thing to try to find parking for 30 businesses that are going to have their garages blocked in downtown Seattle, where of course there's just lots of parking all over the place, right? So there was very little parking. So to help work through that issue was kind of crazy. Again, hats off to Kristen HDR and Brad for pulling that together. With our last 5 minutes here, the last thing was we had pretty significant contractor problems. And I don't mean to say that the contractor themselves were problems, but rather problematic issues that just surrounded the construction, or the deconstruction rather, of this, of the viaduct. One of the things that's funny about a demolition project is that it's, if you have a TCE that you need because a viaduct is going to come crashing down in your parking lot, as was the case for 40 businesses along the corridor that we had to work with. One of the problems is if there's a TCE extension, the property owner can't exactly say no to the extension because there's, what is it, 8, 10, 12, 15,000 pounds of concrete that's right in their driveway. When we said, hey, the contractor would come to us, we're not going to be able to remove the pieces of the viaduct from your parking lot, and so we need an extension. It put us in, needless to say, a rather awkward situation where we're kind of like, we're kind of going to be illegally on your property because the TC is expired. The contractor didn't get it off when they needed to get it off. And what are you going to do? Chris LaBonde, who's on this call, he was heading up that whole effort. And I mean, we would get TCE extension requests from the contractor 48 hours before their current TCE expired. So we're rushing out there. We had people on the ground all the time trying to rush and get signatures so that we could be protected in case there's some liability issues and other things that came up. In addition to that, there was 4 to 6 property rights per parcel. So there was a pre-construction survey, a post-construction survey, noise monitoring, side sewer connection, where they wanted to make sure that people's sewer wasn't being disrupted by the viaduct coming down. All of these on one parcel multiplied times 70, 80 parcels. Became a coordination effort that was just, it was crazy. I mean, it was just one of those, it was one of those things where if the whole team wasn't all in sync, we were just going to get completely overwhelmed with the amount of rights and property interests and expirations that were happening in all of it. So we found that half of our team continued to stay busy for, gosh, a whole year after we got all the property rights, just in dealing with the contractor claims that were going against them. We got about 3 minutes left, but one funny story is, I think it was, gosh, it couldn't have been any more than a week or two once the contractor started. We got a phone call, of course. I think I got a phone call like 10 o'clock at night. And a prominent person in AWV said, the contractor has boarded up a business window with the business still in the building. Wrong building, wrong window, has nothing to do with the project. And they just see like a contractor coming up with a big piece of plywood and hammering up this big, big blockade. And the people come out of the business, what's going on? He's like, hey, there's going to be some concrete blocks going to come through your window here. You want to be protected. And he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Nobody's talked to us about this. So there was those sorts of problems all the time. A lot of fires being put out, a lot of comedy and a lot of stress actually at the same time. 3 quick takeaways, and then I'll leave it open for Q&A here. I think first takeaway, definitely teamwork does in fact make the dream work. This is one of those projects where we really needed to leverage legal expertise. We really leaned on Dave Lehow at FHWA, WASDOT, and even our own studies of the regulations to figure out how to pull together an incentive program. The real expertise of Brad, we had with some real people on our team as well, and Krista really helped us to understand how to deal with all these cars that were being blocked, how to create mitigation agreements. It was just one of those really neat collaborative efforts.
Yes.
Oh, still here. I got a minute left. Takeaway 2. Maybe reading the regs can actually get us to some creative solutions. Pretty funny. I think in our industry, there's a tendency to, at least I know that I'm at fault for this, to not always read the regs on things. And I appreciated some of our own leadership's approach on that. I know Todd Hudak, who's a lawyer, our co-founder here at Commonstreet, and he's like, I think there's some real answers for us regarding an incentive program in the regs. And so we worked through that, and that was it was a cool thing to be able to get in there and say, like, I think we can find a way kind of out around this appraisal problem and being able to deal with that special benefits offset. And the takeaway 3 is just, and this is just kind of applauding with all the crazy relocation issues, the incentive program, the contractor issues, just kind of more of a praise, I'd say, to the AWV team. I would say without exception, that it's probably been the best well-run program I've ever been a part of in 20 years. And we really attributed, this is a big value for our company too, but this gentle, frequent, and transparent communications philosophy. If you think you're going to be behind schedule, don't wait, 3, 4, 5 months until you are already past and now you're in trouble. But just really being able to, there's my 15 minutes, really being able to get away from that mentality and to be transparent with our struggles, our issues, and not have kind of a gotcha environment where you're worried that if you say something that people are going to call you out or you're going to make some big mistake. So that was a huge thing. So I would say that's our 3 takeaways. There's obviously, I think there's a 2 hours per slide on this particular project, but there's a good 15-minute overview, and I'm happy here. Just again, thanks to IRWA here and AWV team for making it possible, and happy to take any questions that you guys have. I think you said 15 minutes and then maybe a few minutes for questions.
Well, thank you, Hutch. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to either type it in the Zoom group chat or raise your hand so I can unmute you. Any questions? If not, we can circle back with Andrew and have him finish up his presentation. I believe he is back.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you, Hutch.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Look forward to the presentations here.
Thank you, Hutch and Common Street. All right, Andrew, if you are back, you are to go.
I'm just going to say that was Comcastic, and let's just pick up essentially where we left off.
Major appraisal issues we needed to address in this project were larger parcel, special benefit, and a development moratorium. In the post-Hearst decision era, water rights and water availability is playing a larger part in the highest and best use determination of parcels. There were 3 parcels that had common ownership, 1 vacant, and 2 with homes built on them. Each parcel was about 150 feet wide, but the minimum wellhead protection radius was 100 feet, meaning that a parcel would need to be at least 200 feet wide in order to legally and safely site a well. Since there was common ownership and it was within the owner's legal authority to share the well with adjacent parcels, we found that the undeveloped parcel illustrated above was buildable. Next door was a parcel that was vacant, had no well, and was also 150 feet wide. In the before condition, this parcel had no ability to sink a well on their property without securing a wellhead protection easement from a neighboring parcel. In the after condition, with municipal water running along the southern property line, the parcel was developable, which was our special benefit. Finally, there was a parcel that was placed under a development moratorium due to improper clearing. Since the expiration date of the moratorium was known, we were able to target a value between what it would be worth as an immediately developable site and an undevelopable site. In order to estimate the value of the subjects, we had to look at a wide variety of factors. The first was noise. We based our noise adjustment off of the Air Installation Compatible Use Zoning, or AICUZ, which is a program administered by the U.S. Department of the Navy. As part of this program, the noise impacts on areas surrounding land-based naval air bases is estimated at the ground and is reported in 5 zones. Those are areas not impacted, 60 to 65, 65 to 70, 70 to 75, and areas experiencing greater than 75 decibels of noise impacts. For reference, sounds above 70 decibels are considered annoyingly loud. The sound of a typical vacuum cleaner to a person operating it is about 75 decibels, and permanent hearing loss can occur at 80 decibels. We also talked with retired Navy pilots who practiced at the field to better fine-tune our adjustments. They were able to tell us which areas were more often impacted than others due to the specific mechanisms of the training regiments. Next is PFAS contamination. In order to determine whether there is contamination, the U.S. Department of the Navy has established various testing zones to find the limit of the contamination. Due to subterranean topography, distance alone is not a valid indicator of the likelihood or concentration of contamination. However, it is a major factor. Since proximity was a major factor in both noise level and likelihood of PFAS contamination, we were unable to separate these 2 adjustments with any level of certainty. So there was a combined AICUZ and PFAS testing zone adjustment applied. There is limited access to municipal sewer service in the area, so septic systems are required on most buildable lots. There are large variations in how well the soils can perk. One parcel can perk like it's a colander, and the one next door might as well be a swimming pool. When a parcel perked well, it was advertised as such, so it was obvious to us that there was a significant factor to value. We utilized the USDA soil survey maps to identify parcels with soil types that were more likely or less likely to perk well. One of our subjects was undevelopable in the before condition, and one parcel had a development moratorium on it. For both of these, it was important for us to track down sales of recreational land or land that was otherwise difficult to develop. The largest issue we faced with the valuation of the subjects was availability of good sales data. The competitive market area was quite small, and there was not a lot of sales activity. While most appraisals utilized 3 to 4 comparables, we ended up using 10, which included virtually every sale of remotely comparable vacant land that occurred within the previous few years. With a small data set also came great difficulty in deriving market-based adjustments, so we used a hybrid approach to estimating value. First, we applied adjustments that we could quantitatively prove, and then we applied qualitative or judgment-based adjustments. These were expressed in terms of inferior or superior. Common qualitative adjustments would be for the type of access, the topography, presence of high voltage lines, etc. After this was all tallied up, we had an adjusted range of values and a qualitative ranking from extremely inferior to extremely superior. We placed the subject and the value ranking next to whichever comparable was most similar, and from this we were able to estimate the value for each lot. This project required us to consider the value implications of granting an easement on land that was already impacted by an easement, or two, or three. To address this, we needed to consider the impact that the original easement or easements had on the utility of the land, taking into consideration setbacks, development restrictions, use restrictions, etc. Ultimately, the loss in property rights for land already encumbered by an easement or two within development setback areas is very small. The appraisals we ended up producing were nearly 90 pages long, which is not something that a property owner is likely to find approachable without some special touches. In order to try and make it easy to understand as possible, we created some in-house graphics. One thing we find helps a lot is to produce an overlay of the project plans onto the subject property. This is sometimes provided by engineers, but not always. Each report is custom crafted without the use of report writing software. Sometimes reports written with such software can have a boilerplate feel, and while they get the job done, they can sometimes be difficult for lay people to follow. We also take the time to explain difficult concepts in plain English. While we realize that the intended users of the report are, well, you guys, we also know that the property owners are likely to see them, so an easy-to-read report will help them understand the rationale for our value conclusions and hopefully make the acquisition process easier. Thank you all for the opportunity to share the project. I wish I were able to go into more detail and to be presenting in real time, but Andrew Sorba should be able to address any questions you have. Please be cognizant that his answers may need to be a little vague. As last I heard, the project is still under acquisition, and we have only been cleared by the Navy and other parties to discuss the project in general terms. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Phil. Does anybody have any questions for Andrew Sorba and Appraisal Group of the Northwest? If you do, please raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. I'm happy to unmute you. Going once. Twice. All right, I think we are ready to move on to LaBonde Land and Scott Matatich. I will go ahead and unmute you now.
Get started.
All right. Thank you, Appraisal Group of the Northwest. Hello, Scott. The floor is yours.
Hi, folks. Am I off mute? Thank you so much. My name is Scott Matatich with LaBonde Land, and I am here to present the project that we did with King County's Wastewater Treatment Division, and it's called the North Mercer ENATAI Interceptor Project. We're really excited about it. It had a huge range of great property issues, super complex design, and overall a really good success story. So let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, I assume I'm live. Can you guys see that?
Not seeing anything. Make sure if you hit the screen share button, you click on the right window where your slide or presentation is. There we go. I see it.
Okay, thanks, Jesse, for guiding me in here. Okay, I just went to the slide presentation. You can see that now?
Yes, good to go.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, great. Let me start with just an overview of a visual display of the total system that King County operates for wastewater treatment. All those red lines you see are over 350 miles of pipeline that carry and convey wastewater through its system to 5 treatment plants within the region. So really big system, obviously, and our project is located right near the center of your screen there at Mercer Island. And there's that little red line that connects the north part of Mercer Island across Lake Washington to the Bellevue mainland. And if we zoom into that segment, that little red line isn't so little really after all. As you can see, the sort of gray area on North Mercer Island is the service area for this pipeline that collects all of the wastewater at the North Mercer pump station. Here's it overland through a pipe and into Lake Washington, through the pipe follows the shoreline of Lake Washington, across the east channel of Lake Washington, and then it picks up more wastewater from the town of Beaux Arts and the neighborhood of ENATAI, continues through the water to the Swahilacan pump station. So that is the county's existing pipeline that is over capacity. It's an aging pipeline that may have I&I issues, inflow infiltration issues, but really overall the county is looking at upgrading its system to meet anticipated flows through the year 2060. So we couldn't just upgrade or rehabilitate the existing line. They really looked at a whole range of alternatives, but ultimately they decided that a new capital project was in store, so a new pipeline had to be added. So that means adding a new 14,000 feet of pipeline from the North Mercer pump station to Swahilacan pump station in Bellevue. Okay, so this kicked off a really complex alternatives analysis in the year 2015. They engaged the property staff, property consultant team with pre-design. And it is just awesome to see the engineers go through these evaluations of what is very complex hydraulics. And I can get into that a little bit. I don't want to get super bogged down in alternatives, but I do want to share with you guys some of these details. So through gates 2 and 3, we started off with about 15 alternatives that were winnowed down to 4 alternatives at the end of gate 2, and then finally a single preferred alternative at the end of gate 3. And through each of those gates, a full risk analysis was done, which included property as a weighted factor. So here's an overview of the alternatives from a map scale, and you can see the different segments that were looked at. And each of those segments in different combinations. And you can see the matrix here of sort of all of the versions of the pathways that this pipe could take, sort of culminating in those 15 alternatives. And each one really had its own set of unique risk factors. Some of the things that we looked at were the entire team, not just property, obviously, that Tetra Tech and Jacobs engineers did a great job in evaluating all these very complex problems. But one is tunneling versus boring technologies for putting a new pipe in the ground. You know, you can open trench and lay a new pipe in the ground that way. There are certain areas that they looked at boring through a micro tunnel boring machine, or horizontal directional drilling. And the risk factors associated with each were carefully weighed. You know, things like encountering subterranean boulders. You know, there's just a risk to microtunneling and boring. Say you want to try to avoid property risks by going underground and minimizing those property risks. Well, there's other factors such as encountering subterranean obstacles and the cost of tunneling and boring. We also looked at things like single pipe versus double pipe construction. And one of the factors there is the complicated hydrology that occurs when you're looking at water. You know, this system from the North Mercer pump station is under a force main up to a high point on Mercer Island, at which point it becomes a gravity fed system. So going from a single pipe to double pipe combination really had to be weighed carefully. And every time you mix or you change one part of the system, the hydraulics over the entire system have to be analyzed and looked at. So it was really complicated and really fun to look at all of the property potential impacts that could have arisen there. And so the main property risk is, as everyone probably well knows, is the use of condemnation. So, you know, you increase the number of properties involved on a project, and you want to kind of minimize that the best you can. And so I want to talk more about that. So I think this slide sort of touches on what I was talking about earlier in terms of water dynamics and the complexities of the design. But overall, property-wise, we were looking at touching about 75 properties through the various alternatives. There were encroachments in the right-of-way. We had a condominium association that we really wanted to avoid touching, as everyone well knows about the common ownership of condominiums. We were looking at touching 3 different public parks, each of which involved RCO funding. And also, any in-water work needed approval from the Army Corps of Engineers. And for the navigable waterways, we needed to approach the Department of Natural Resources. So a lot of factors went into alternatives analysis, with the overall mission, the guiding mission of, from my role as the property lead on the consultant team, how do we minimize impacts to private property? Well, through design, we came up with some, and through Doug Williams' leadership too at the county, big props to you, sir, for pressing very hard for the project team to think creatively about how to avoid impacts. So a few examples, the county had an existing easement corridor, so it had right-of-way through private property that included 6 properties right out of the North Mercer pump station. And instead of utilizing that existing corridor to put the new pipe in, he insisted that the project go around the block. So it actually added a little bit of pipeline, but it reduced the impact to the community by a substantial amount. You know, the pipe actually would have gone through side yards, you know, and torn up 6 people's yards. And so that was eliminated through the design. So why don't I move on here, and I can touch on some of these other ones. Here's another example of minimizing property impact through design. We went out to this particular property owner for a right of entry for survey work, and quickly realized that it would be contentious if we didn't factor in some type of redesign. So we actually looked at it from a hydraulic standpoint and a property standpoint, and determined that it would be feasible to reroute the pipe. And I don't know if you can see it there, but the pipe actually goes around the property now. So we moved the pipe to the other side of the property to avoid an elderly mother who actually slept in the bedroom that would have been closest to the old construction zone. We made quite a design change there, but it was a great win. So this is all, again, early design process, which led us to a final alignment here. Okay, so I'll get into the details of each final alignment segment. And really what we had here in final design and right-of-way acquisition more of a three-part project. It's like 3 projects in one, really. There's the Mercer Island segment, which involved open cut construction. So this is trenching and laying pipe down. And that required 6 easements on private property and then 19 rights of entry for downstream analysis. Then the second piece, through Bellevue, through the ENATAI the ENATAI neighborhood of Bellevue, involves horizontal directional drilling, or HDD technology, and that will require 20 subterranean easements for subterranean HDD boring, and then 3 additional easements for the bore pit at the west portal, where they'll pull the pipe into the hole. Then the third segment is for a CIPP rehab section. So this is an existing pipe that needs to be rehabbed, and in order to do that, you place a bypass line upland, which required 17 temporary construction easements. So each segment had a really broad range of property issues that we had to address. There were also some interagency agreements that we touched upon. Just 2 to note here, really high level, is the DNR. We needed an easement for crossing under Lake Washington at the East Channel, and a couple of parks in the city of Bellevue have RCO funding, which is the Recreation and Conservation Office of Washington State. So due to funding sources there, you have to get special approvals to do work. So there were, as I mentioned, a range of challenges that we encountered in dealing with property owners on this project, and it's just absolutely worthy of sharing with you guys. So really happy to make this part of the project of the year consideration for all of you. So let's get into a couple of those. This particular property owner here was going to lose all of this vegetation in his front yard, and that was of particular concern to him because, as you can see in the, well, you might be able to see in the background, there is the bridge deck. You can see a railing and then the bridge deck of the I-90 bridge. This is just on the end of north of Mercer Island, right at the I-90 bridge. So he's going to lose all that screening. He was very concerned about that. A very nice gentleman, and we were able, over the course of time, to establish a really good trust relationship. Very great to work with, but he did have some concerns that he was very, very motivated to, come to terms on before we were able to move forward. So the project brought out a surveyor and our arborist, and we actually came up with a very detailed restoration plan for how to restore his property in the after condition. So this is a great example of working with a property owner to come to an agreement so that we can move the project forward. There was just no way to get around the utility bottleneck. We tried everything that we could to redesign the project and skinny up and minimize that acquisition area. But it was unavoidable, the fact that we needed a permanent and temporary construction easement, and he was losing all that vegetation. So in the end, he was happy, and we negotiated an easement. Over on the waterfront side, we had some other unique issues that we encountered. So this is a picture of a boat. The property owner is very concerned about potential damage to it, pulling it in and out of his boat launch during construction, and the potential for conflicts there. So we had to negotiate special agreements that would satisfy that particular owner. And then in the background beyond that boat, you can see some of the waterfront homes where the bypass pipe will have to be laid across their yards. So what that looks like is this. Here's about half of the CIPP rehab segment, and that sort of double hatch line there, that corridor that goes under all the docks, that's the existing county pipeline that needs to be rehabilitated. And in order to do so, a bypass line would be placed upon the shore and crossing all of their backyards. Well, also, it turns out each of their sewers tie directly into the pipe. So the bypass would have to intercept each side sewer with a grinder pump and then place it into the bypass line to go downstream. Okay, and then this is kind of shifting gears over to the HDD alignment, the subterranean boring segment. And this is really unique because of the technology involved. I mean, first of all, I just find it totally amazing that a large bore drill rig can accurately drill a hole at a curve, you know, not just a horizontal curve, but a vertical curve as well with such accuracy. So that's incredible. But just to orient you guys, and this probably looks familiar, the road over on the right-hand side is Bellevue Way, and that ties right into, well, it just crosses right under where the light rail is being constructed. So this is the hillside all above the Mercer Slough there. And a unique part of the negotiations with property owners on this piece is the fact that a guide wire had to be placed, or construction has yet to occur, but it's part of the easement agreement that a guiding wire will be placed across their yards, more or less on top of the center line of this drill rig corridor. And that guide wire is supposed to, you know, communicate with the leading edge of the boring machine as it's constructing underground to keep it on path. So that had to be negotiated, and property owner concerns about that had to be resolved. So the overall results of the right-of-way acquisition process is that the agents successfully acquired 45 of 46 easements, which is just incredible. And only one had to be referred to the legal process, which did settle in relative short order. So it was just the overall response that we received from the community was just tremendous. And you know, being aware of the demographic out there of waterfront homes, the you know, relative education level of people and general wealth was, you know, you can anticipate things going very differently. There was a lot of fatigue when it comes to other public projects in the area. So we were really anticipating a lot of pushback, but we, through incentive programs and negotiations, we were able to overall have just absolutely successful right-of-way acquisition processes. Just great. My hat's off to the agents. Doug Williams and Trevor Carr at King County did a tremendous job, and Mark Anderson with LaBonde Land just did a phenomenal job negotiating with owners and working as a team. I mean, I just can't speak highly enough of the communication between the engineers and our property staff. Everyone did a really good job. So that's my presentation. Any questions? And I would actually like to open it up too if Doug has anything to add or chime in on. I think you're in the audience.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'll make sure Doug is unmuted if he's got anything to add. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to either raise your hand or type a message in the chat box. Going once.
All right.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right. And last up on the list today is Snohomish County and Adrian Hilbert. If you're still there, Adrian, you are clear for takeoff. Adrian, are you still with us?
I am.
Hey, there you are. Sorry about that. Had to get you unmuted.
This will stop us. If I remember all these good steps.
Yeah, there we go. I can see.
Can you guys see anything?
Yes, I can see your slide.
Oh, okay. I'll pull it over here where I can see it. So after all your fancy projects and Great big projects. I feel like the country bumpkin up north here.
You just lost your slide. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, you don't see it?
Now
No,
I see your desktop.
You're gonna
Alright.
want to hit the presentation mode. The little looks like a screen in the top left corner with all the little icons. Over to the right a little.
Slideshow.
You are
Yes.
you are screen sharing. Is that what I want to do?
Yeah, you just want to enter the slideshow mode.
Oh. Ow. Did I mess it up?
No, you're here. In your menu items, there's one that says slideshow at the very top, kind of to the right of the center.
Straight up with your mouse.
Yeah.
Hi, Joe, right there.
Yep. And then click on that, and then from beginning.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right.
Uh,
Okay. All right. Well, here goes my little tiny project. It's a little simple project, but I thought I'd throw it out. We had it's South Machias Road and Machias Cutoff intersection improvements. That's the old depot where we have a trailhead right now. This is kind of an overview of where we're at. This is our project down here. This is Lake Stevens, the south half of Lake Stevens. Everett is over here, Snohomish. So we had a three-way intersection here that we needed to change. We're coming down a hill here, and we have 3 stop signs, and then we have the Centennial Trail back here that just it wasn't safe. It wasn't a really good fit there. So we needed to, the main street came this way, main arterial, and we're going to change it wherever my thing is. On this project, we had to realign and widen the roads leading up to the intersection. We had to put new signalization in. We didn't have any out there other than a red blinking beacon. That's all that was out there. We had to replace an upsized culvert for fish passage, new stormwater detention pond, and we had to incorporate the Centennial Trail into a new alignment with crossing it at the signal pads. Boy, I did better earlier this morning. This is our new alignment. So our new alignment is making a straighter path here. This was the part that's coming down the hill. This is the old Centennial Trail, just went right through here, which was not a good spot when trucks have to stop. The stop sign was right here. So we've changed that Centennial Trail and got a new alignment on that. We also put in a large fish passage culvert there with a drainage pond over here. So this is the difference. This is before coming down the hill and kind of all, it wasn't a very nice intersection, and now it's more streamlined. We've got this coming to a T, and we've got our Centennial Trail, got a better route on that. This is what the intersection looked like. We had a flashing beacon and a couple stop signs out there. Our team, we had a great team, project manager, Vera, the engineer, signal engineer, environmental, culvert design. We had Parks and Rec were also involved because of the trail. Our property officer of the county, Tom Stowe, our review appraiser, and our CIC, our appraisers. It's a small project, but we had a lot going on. Before we had a T with a 3-way stop and a flashing beacon. In the middle of the intersection, not in the middle, but off to the side, we had the Centennial Trail crossing and a 5-foot diameter fish passage culvert. Why am I having trouble with that one? There's several stormwater facilities that needed to be designed into the project.
Hey, Adrian.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody else can see your slides, but they're not changing. You're still on the first slide.
What? Well,
Just try click down a couple slides.
here.
Oh.
Did you see that one? Okay.
Perfect.
That's where we are. Lake Stevens, Everett, Snohomish. I'll whip through them quickly. And this is coming down a hill, kind of a three-way mess right in here. We've got the Centennial Trail, got the PUD as an exclusive easement. They're always fun to, they're fun to deal with, love them, but sure takes a long time. So we had to widen the roads, realign them, put new signalization in, replace the culvert, stormwater detention. We've seen that one. So now it's more streamlined this way. We come down the hill and it tees into there. This is the old path of the Centennial Trail, and now we can go stop there and then cross safely. That's kind of the difference. Doesn't show, well, the trail shows a big difference. We had to build a bypass trail so that we could build this. So within the 100-foot corridor that the trail Parks and Rec had purchased, we had to build a bypass trail in this so that we could build this. This is our old intersection with our beacon, and it wasn't a very easy intersection to go through. This is our team, just went through. We keep going. We had to watch where the location of the homes were, the public right-of-way, the stormwater runoff. We had hilly terrains and sight distance issues and accident history issues. And we needed to listen to what the residents could tell us about out in the area. So this is the Centennial Trail before. And then the stop sign is right up here. So people would cross the road and cars still needed to come through this portion. Jogging trail needed to be realigned with a new fish passage. And then there's about 500 double dump trucks coming down from the mountains full of gravel that went through this intersection every day. So that was always a big safety issue. We had buses and animals. There's a school just a quarter mile down the street, so there was lots of parents and buses going through there. So the traffic count was about 10,000 cars, with 500 of those being double gravel loaded double dump trucks. And then the school. And the Centennial Trail's there. It's a 30-mile long trail with a 10-foot wide multi-purpose and a 6-foot natural service parallel equestrian trail. So we have horses and people. There's about 400,000 citizens that use that trail each year. That's about 33,000 people a month going through that trail. They all had to cross in that skewed intersection where there were no lights and no crossing aids. It was just the one flashing beacon. The traffic and the joggers just don't mix well. Neither do the horses or the dump trucks. And we had 3 water companies we had to deal with out there. We had PUD, City of Snohomish, and Everett. Everett has 2 48-inch water lines going through that area, plus the other utilities that we all get to deal with. We had overhead utilities underground. We needed to outreach to Snohomish School District, the trucking companies. The Cascade Bike Company is their bike club is very active out there on that trail. Worked with Parks and Rec for the coordination of the trail notices. And we had road closures we needed to put out there. Some more entities that we worked with, all the tribes and ecology and fish and wildlife and all that. One of the considerations we had was a road establishment. Who owns that road? Right there where there's a 100-foot wide swath that Parks and Rec owns, but who owns the road and who has custody? That was fun to try and nail down and figure out how to clear up. We needed to realign the trail, so we had to build a temporary trail and put in all the safety features. And we had to do that in the 100-foot wide corridor. And the culvert was very large, 17.5 feet by 6 feet. There's not that many manufacturers that make that size box culvert, so we had to make sure we ordered that so we didn't miss our fish window. So we ordered that early. There's our right of way coming down the hill. This is our street. And this is the 100-foot wide swath that the trail is on. And when I got the project, it should have been done, but nothing had been done. So I had 9 properties to purchase. 8 of them needed for purchase, and 1 a temporary construction easement. We also had the PUD had an exclusive easement, and we needed to purchase from the property owners that owned the property and the PUD. 1 property owner had animals pinned right next to the road, so we had to coordinate with him, move his animals. Another property owner had an old gate, so I helped him get a access permit, and we built a new access for him. It went pretty smooth with all the property owners. It's kind of fun. This is our culvert being laid in there. Whoops. We had to watch out for the power line so we could swing it over and lift her in. Lots of power lines. There's our culvert and our culvert afterward. And this is a drainage facility we had built in there, and this is the same looking south. We've got water in there. This is the new Centennial Trail, how it comes up to the road. This over here is for bikes. You can put your foot here and hold on here, and then there is a pad here so that you can press so you can cross the street. That comes up next. It wasn't up at the time of these pictures, but it makes a lot safer crossing for people on the trail. There's our resident field inspector. This is the before and after of the culvert. Kind of cleaned that up, made it pretty nice. There were a lot of moving parts. It's just a tiny project, and here's just a few shots of the final product. That's with all the illumination, just a much safer intersection. Oops, and we have new residents. Good, where are you going? There we go. There's a nice crossing for the trail. The culvert. There's always somebody on that trail. There's our nice little pad, so it tells you how long till you can cross and don't cross and all those things we need to tell people. And thanks for watching. Thanks for coming to IRWA. Woohoo! Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you very much, Adrian.
I don't know how to get out of it. Oh, here we go.
I think there's a stop sharing button somewhere.
I got it, I think.
There was one question for Commonstreet that we'll get to in just a minute, but does anybody have any questions for Snohomish County?
There's actually a couple, Jesse, in the chat when you scroll up a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Any for Snohomish County? I see one for Commonstreet. I think King County had one that was answered. All right. Thank you very much, Adrian.
Thank you. Thank everybody.
All right. Let's see here. Question for Commonstreet. What was the percentage of acquisitions you had to send to legal versus closing by agents? And we're curious to know, this was a very difficult project with lots of balls being juggled. Curious to know the spread on that. That was a question by Hutch, or Steve Sawyer, excuse me. Hutch, do you have a response?
Yes. Steve, I'll have to talk to you offline about putting me on the spot with that kind of a question. Now, for real, you know, I actually, it was in my notes to mention that, and I know a lot of you have probably had done this approach, but When we looked at the schedule, we recognized that we needed to probably initiate what we call we've done this on a couple projects with pretty good degree of success, what we call a friendly condemnation approach, which essentially meant like after we negotiate, there was a certain fixed period of time where we talked with the project team about agreeing to the idea of filing condemnation on every single file that wasn't settled after, let's say, I think in our case, it was close to about 60 days. And that approach, it did work. It keeps us on schedule, but boy, you got to really have good negotiators out in the field to kind of pad that, right? Because you're working along and they're getting an appraisal and they're trying to figure out, how to deal with your big TCE and this huge, viaduct that's going to come smashing down in front of their business. And you're saying, and by the way, you are going to get a notice in the mail and, be served in a condemnation process, but we're going to keep working with you. So the short of it was we had, I think we had about 3 or 4 parcels that really truly needed to end up in a condemnation pass off to the AG's office. And then we initiated, it was up to 40 parcels. I was just checking these numbers today, 40 parcels with this friendly condemnation approach where we kept negotiating, but we simultaneously kept or concurrently rather, kept the condemnation process going. So kind of a tip of the hat again to the AG's office at WASDOT to initiate all that. We had to do all these final action meetings, and we actually found it to be very effective to do all these final action meetings because they recognized they were entering into a condemnation process, and the vast majority of them did not want that. So yeah, and then as far as the project, the second part being difficult, it was a walk in the park, man. It was like no, it was. It was difficult. It was very hard. I would say it was one of those project of firsts. It's one of those rare ones where you're like, we've never had a special benefits project in my career that had such a dramatic effect on a whole project, not just one parcel, but 70 parcels. We never had a situation where we were developing a new incentive program. I'd never been a part of a project that was doing really complicated relocation mitigations to try to prevent 1,000 cars from being stuck on their garage during construction. I haven't been a part of a project where a contractor actually hammered up, a piece of plywood on an existing architecture firm that wasn't even the right parcel, and that sort of thing to happen like on a daily basis. So it was definitely, it was like you wake up one morning and you're like, okay, what do we got today? It was kind of one of those. So thanks for the question. That's a good question.
Thank you for the explanation, Hutch. Great presentations all around. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come out and attend our virtual meeting. This is a great one, another one. I am going to start the poll. Please, if you wouldn't mind, vote for who should receive the winner for Project of the Year. The voting is anonymous. Nobody will know who you voted for. But please take the time to cast your vote. The poll will be active right now.
And hey, Jesse, there was another question for LaBonde as well.
Yeah, we can go ahead and talk about that. Let's see here. Did I miss the question?
That was the one from 1232 from Steve Sawyer.
The question was, whose idea was it to involve real estate early in planning? And did you have to convince them to include it early in the process? How much did that affect the success rate for closing acquisitions?
Yeah, Steve, thanks for the question. Am I off mute? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jesse. I did answer it in the chat box, but I realized after Hutch's lengthy reply to the last one, which I make a motion to disregard everything that wasn't part of his 15-minute presentation. No, I'm kidding. No, Steve, that's a good question. Not all projects give you the opportunity to be involved in pre-design. And lucky for us on this one, King County had in its pre-design contracts property scope to do full alternatives analysis and gate 2 report, gate 3 report. So we were part of the team from the very beginning. And second part of your question is how did that affect acquisitions, and did that help us close deals? And I would say that the answer is yes. It may be hard to tell, but the reason I say that it's yes is because we could honestly, with a straight face, absolutely honestly and truthfully, to go to the property owners and say that we looked at every option. We looked at every alternative we possibly could to avoid your property, but for reasons X, Y, and Z, we need this easement. And, so we could sleep really well at night, and we could go to the property owners, truthfully and honestly, and say, we've looked at all the options, and, we have to move forward with the project, and this is it. So I think most people felt comfortable with that explanation and the process we've gone through. So it was well vetted, and I think there was enough communication on the project team side that we were able to convey that to property owners. So yeah, worked out well.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. That's a great answer. All right, everybody. Has everyone had a chance to cast your ballot? If so, I believe I am ready to call the Project of the Year Presentation Award winner as Commonstreet. Yay! Commonstreet.
Congratulations. I'll get you the $100 Uber Eats gift card. Hutch, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And for the other presenters, I'll be sending $25 gift certificates for Starbucks. So thank you so much for submitting and presenting. They were all awesome projects. Thanks.
It really worked. Thank you, everybody, for attending another successful virtual meeting.
Yep.
A couple last reminders. Go ahead, Touch. You got anything to say?
I was just going to say thanks, Jesse and Diane, all you guys just putting this together. Sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you to all the presenters for your time and effort. We really appreciate the presentations. Always learned something great. Several things today, actually. One more reminder that our holiday social party is currently being put together. That'll be 4 o'clock on Wednesday, December 9th. We are still finalizing next month's presentation. We will have a board meeting. Everybody is always welcome. Information will be posted to the website. Without anything else, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Anybody else?
Thanks, Jesse.
To say?
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.